Great. Thank you so much for having me. And already, coming into some talk about AI and, um, this reality that it's a tool that is widely used in our field. I was in a meeting earlier today in the provost's office talking about how so many fields are using these tools, and our students will be expected to know how to use them, but we're also learning as we go. And It's really a fascinating time to be a student, to be graduating, to be doing this work as an educator and as a leader in our fields. So I want to share with you today some of what I've learned about the job search process, ways to use AI, and I hope this will be helpful for you on both sides, whether you are hiring and you are trying to use these tools for those who may be applying for positions, whatever that might be, or for yourself when you are applying for different positions and learning how to use these tools to enhance your abilities. So let me I'll just share my screen there, and I will present. So make sure, let's see. Good. Okay. Everybody able to see slides? Good. Okay, cool. So I'm also not going to assume, so I've learned this by teaching AI for a little while. I'm not going to assume everybody is familiar with all the tools either. So I'll do a quick primer of what you might expect that might introduce you to some tools you're not familiar with, as well as introduce you to ways that these tools, how you can discover new tools as well. So a little bit about me. I teach a course at Walt Disney World every other summer at Walt Disney in experience design. So we're talking about design, behavior, and how design spaces, interaction design, whether it's screen-based or in-person, can create experiences. So I know Dragonfly, very much that field experience is critical for experiential learning, and what we take away from being in the field is so special and teaches us so many unique opportunities for discovery that it's fun doing this work. We're interacting with cast members. This is one of our grad students who decided to go off script and start to mess with one of the cast members there at Rise of the Resistance, an attraction there at Hollywood Studios, and how cast members responded in those ways. So also trips to Zion National Park and other parts of the country with our graduate students. So the kind of education you're getting, the kind of experiences you're getting are so rich for discovering, for example, how the National Park Service can create and facilitate a natural experience, as naturalist experience as possible for millions of guests every year there at Zion. And how they do that in ways like shuttle services and policies and procedures that allow guests to have the kind of experience of engaging with nature that they might otherwise not have. And then also my work is still very interaction-based, interacting with products and services. I thought this was a fascinating example, just to give you a design example, that this Everyman Jack body wash looks like a flask designed to look like a flask. So when you think about branding and marketing, if your body wash looks like something that I don't know, a little bit more gritty, people would use a flask. Design can do that. And then one project that I'm collaborator through Scripps Gerontology Center is in advanced care planning and barriers to advanced care planning. Our work, we're looking at barriers that prevent people from doing their do not resuscitate, their advanced care planning, wills, testaments, other important steps for people to have agency in their own choices should they ever, whether they're actively dying or in a place where they cannot speak for themselves. So we do work in the field, and that research informs policy and outcomes that shape people's experiences as they make these wishes. So we report a lot of this through Design Workbench, and a lot of that work now is in how AI is impacting design experiences, products, services, and systems. So, with that in mind, I also teach a course in called Creating with Generative AI, Shaping the Future here at Miami. And that work is learning how to use these tools, working with primarily, so it's a Miami Plan course. That is a sequence of courses that students complete. I get a lot of first and second year students, though the course has generated a great deal of interest across all years. And we're learning first how to use the tools to take us further, how to use tools to help people in some disciplines be able to expand, to create images or to polish their stories and their resumes, and in many ways, search for jobs as well. So I'm going to share some of that with you. And then also, starting next year, I'm going to be a Miami University Provost Fellow working on AI initiatives. So the course that I teach, that's a Miami Plan course, we really focus on these 4 steps with generative intelligence. And I'm going to share a lot of these steps with you as we get into the job market and how you search for jobs. You can use these tools in a variety of ways, but I find that they are really successful in these 4 buckets. In ideating, helping you to come up with ideas that it's like having a focus group that can join you to bounce ideas off of. Can be really useful tools for that. Also for research, to use these tools to gather information and to compile those into buckets and themes that help you to make sense of those. Creating, this is where that shortcutting and the kind of the problems sometimes come with AI of students or anyone. My concerns, designers immediately going to create this for me, create a resume for me. This can be quite problematic. So I'll touch a little bit on that. But when we develop our skills for creating with these tools, you can actually get some precise outcomes as long as you are still the one in the chair. The AI cannot, or these tools cannot do it for you. You are the one who's the critical thinker. And then last, testing. And I'll touch on testing as well today and how you can use some of these tools to help you to strengthen some of your resume, your writing, and to test out and evaluate content that's in front of you. So these 4 categories can be very useful. And oftentimes I find that the testing and the ideation steps oftentimes get lost. They're the ones that are forgotten most often, that people jump straight to that research, using it like a search engine, or creating. So a little bit about AI as a primer here. So there's some widely-ish known tools. I'll touch on a few. I'll go through this very quickly and then we'll get to jobs. And I hope sharing some of these tools may help you to have some questions and how some of these tools may help you in your process. So ChatGPT, pretty well-known tool there, multimodal now. When we say multimodal, we mean it's a tool that can make images, graphs, charts, as well as words. GPT in the past has only been words, but now OpenAI is embedded, built-in images, where it used to be Dolly only doing those images. So we know ChatGPT and some of what it can do, and I'll give you some extensions on what it can do that might help you with your job search. Also, Anthropic Claude. I'm a big fan of Claude, and I use Claude regularly. I prefer that model. I get a question a lot of times of why. Each of these do different things, and I'll share a little bit about this tool with you in a bit of what they do different. I can go into that, but I definitely want to get to the jobs today. Gosh, if you look at the left side there, like I have some saved chats like taming spicy barbecue sauce, faith discussion, transitioning SAS code, phenomenological foundations of. So these tools can be used in some really broad ways. Gemini, so Google Gemini, as we were talking about earlier, that tool is accessible to and available to all Miami University students. The model we use at Miami is set specifically so any inputs you put into this tool will not train the model. And that's something to remember, that when you put information into one of these models, it will train the model. Your information is part of its training set. That's where personally identifiable information, you must be very careful with some of that. That information that's not public, you will not want to put that into these models because it will be trained. So just be careful with that, especially if we get into things like FERPA and other sensitive information that should not be shared. So just a note there. Um, much of this information you probably already know, but I still want to mention it for those who may be just wading into the waters of generative AI. Now we have some kinda widely ish known tools. I make some assumptions with students at times where I'm like, oh, y'all are digital natives. You know this stuff already. And I find all the time that they actually don't know as much as they think they know, or that they say they know. They're like, oh, I know the tool. And then when we start using it, they're like, actually, I really don't know the tool. So a few that might be of interest to you, especially as we search for jobs, and I may reference these a little bit later in the talk. Perplexity. This is a search engine. So while many of these tools are not built for search, this has always been built for search with AI. So Perplexity was launched before Google search results included those synopses. So Perplexity got to that first, and now we're seeing that everywhere. Where you get those. You get those synopses of the search results. But Perplexity can be a great tool for talking back and forth with your search results. Can be really useful in some of these ways. Midjourney image generation tool. It is paid, so but makes some, as you see here, amazing images. Pretty outstanding content that, with prompting, you can do some pretty outstanding work. With Midjourney or any image generation tools, and I work a great deal in graphic design and marketing. The more precise you are with your prompts, with details in your prompts about, say, I think this is what's really fascinating. The more someone knows their art history and they know cameras, and how different film works. I mean, imagine that, like knowing what 35 millimeter film looks like, but knowing those details can get some really strong results. Same thing with writing. When you know style and you give examples, you're actually going to get much deeper results. Ideagram, a free image generator. There are some, you get tokens where you can use this before it cuts you off. Also a very good model. Sora for generating videos. It is paid only through OpenAI. But by the way, GPT is now available to all students. So OpenAI just announced that, I think 2 weeks ago. So the paid model for ChatGPT is now available too. So pretty outstanding there. But Sora for some fascinating video generation. Stable Diffusion. This is one of those models you may not have ever heard of, but it runs in the background of many things like Canva and other tools. So it is the generator, but it runs in the background of some of these. And then Runway, also one for video generation as well. So really great tool. And then there's specialized tools. I want to share a few of these with you that may help familiarize you with AI. So Canva has AI built in, and I find more students, especially outside of design, but in marketing and in other fields, are using Canva with some pretty good effect. And AI, they're using AI. I think it's Imagen is for image generation from Google. So is generating images for Canva. I believe that's the tool that they use. Interesting site here called They See Your Photos. Try this out if you are ever curious. You can upload an image into it and it will analyze that image for, well, it'll give you a synopsis of this was taken here, and it's eerie. The results are quite creepy on how accurate it is, even with an image that has no reference material of place. And then also it'll even give a rundown of like, this person has an income of blank, in this range. They enjoy these things. They're most likely lazy and like to have whatever. I'm like, it's strange. And I showed this to students one day and they were like, do another one. Ooh, do another one. it's a reminder that these tools can glean a great deal as they analyze patterns. And that's really what they're best for. We talk about our job searches. These tools analyze patterns and find themes within those patterns. That's going to mean a lot for how you write your CV or how you put information for your job search or how you use them to search. I'll give us specific examples in a bit. Hey Jen for having creating avatars that can read scripts and essentially giving life to your written content in any language. This is fascinating. And then one tool here, exactly.ai, is an example of some artists that have gotten together and trained a large language model with machine learning. They've trained it on their own art style. So oftentimes artists are quite resistant to these tools, but these are artists who've said, you know what? What if I train this model on my own artistic style? I allow users to create in my style. And now I'm actually getting the benefit, the financial benefit of my own artistic style expressed for others to use. So some really creative and intriguing ways people are using these tools. And then one a little bit more specific as we turn to the job market is Crystal. So Crystal is a plugin for Chrome, Google Chrome. I don't know if they have Safari or other modules, but this tool is quite interesting. You install it into your browser and then can go to LinkedIn and it will analyze anyone's profile and give you information about that person. Again, these tools analyze patterns. So this is Artie Kuhn. We're good friends, so I feel okay using this. But if I were looking Artie up on LinkedIn, I could use Crystal, and I've done it here, where you see those comparisons on that right side that I am more risk tolerant. He's a little risk averse. I'm a little more skeptical. He's a little bit more trusting, but kind of in the middle. Now, these are generated based on personality tests of how this model was trained. It analyzes the words that are on that person's profile and their connections to come to these conclusions. One thing you've got to remember about these tools, though, they are only as good as their training. So if someone misrepresents themselves or just represents themselves differently in their profile, then it's going to analyze only on what it was given. So if I were cold calling Artie and in Crystal's right pane, it even gives you like, when speaking with Artie, make sure you use lighthearted anecdotes and are friendly up front. Spend time getting to know Artie and be personal. Don't get to business right away. Earn his trust, and then he's more likely to open up. So when talking with students about this tool and using it in class, definitely have had students with the response like, Dennis, this is cringe. I'm not sure I'm cool with this. Like, one thing to be aware of, and I'll talk about this in a moment, employers will use these tools to analyze what you give them in your CV or your resume. And though it is problematic in some ways, our content is being run through machines quite often to be tested. And this is an example of Crystal in doing that. So then there are also sites like The Job for Me, which I have not used. I read a few stories about it, of using a specific AI tool that will find jobs for you based on your content and bring those into one place. So saving you having to do the pound the digital concrete of going to many different job searches and bringing those together. So there's a variety of these tools, and probably the pinnacle or the most technical is building your own. So things like Llama and DeepSeek are models that are open source that you can download, put on your own machine, and begin to develop your own language models. We'll go deeply into those. Of course, DeepSeek is one from China. Interesting about these models. With DeepSeek, if you mention anything about Tiananmen Square, it does not know what that means and will not talk about anything having to do with Tiananmen Square. So how the models were trained will influence what you get. If you want to learn more about these kinds of models you want to build for yourself or want to get more technical, check out Hugging Face or Futurepedia. Hugging Face hosts open source models so you can download them. Futurepedia is a website that it really is a compendium of the most number of tools I've ever seen in one place. So if you're wondering, is there a tool that will do this for me? Check out futurepedia.io. There's a wide range of those tools that maybe you'll discover one that will help you with your job search, help you with job planning, making connections with employers, networking, and a variety of other functions. So Hugging Face for that technical, Futurepedia for a variety of tools and what's out there. So on to the job search. Now we've gone over some of the tools, what's out there, and how some of those function and what they can do. I've got some recommendations just based on what I've learned of these tools, and I'll give you a few examples as we go through. I'd say the biggest thing to remember on these tools is they will take you further, but they don't replace you. I'll give you an example of a researcher here at Miami who's a dear friend of mine. He's in works in genetics. He's in biology and genetics. And I remember talking with him about his research results. And he was in a spot where he's like, I need to either learn Python or I need to find someone else who knows Python because now I'm limited. My data, the data I can't go any further unless I know Python. So generative AI is one where I was like, with these models, you actually don't have to learn Python. It can extend your career and your research in ways that take you further. And that was just a mind-blowing moment where someone who's developed and built up so much knowledge in insights through their research, these tools actually can extend and take you much further. So for those who maybe the resume development process is a little bit daunting, or those who need to generate images, but not a graphic designer or an artist, these tools can take you further, but they don't replace your judgment. We'll talk about that in a bit. So here are a few key ways that can help you on your job search. So one of them, so your resume and your cover letter and enhancing those. So a few tips here. You can test your resume. There's that testing, generating drafts for your own resume. Most of writing is editing. So there are ways you can generate some of those drafts, and then also tailoring your materials for specific job descriptions. And that third one, I know in job searches I've done in the past, right? Like I had a base CV and base materials, but then I would always duplicate that copy and then customize it to Ohio State or customize it to Stanford, or be able to really touch on the position that's specific. AI makes that easier to do, but it's still just good job searching advice. Cater your materials to the job you're searching for. And these tools can help you do some of that. For example, I have my CV here, and placing my CV, which I have written and I've developed that fully, but then using a prompt like this with Claude. So I want you to analyze. So I want to test out my material to make them better. Analyze it for ways to improve clarity for grantors or funders unfamiliar with design research and experience design. So prompting, I won't get into today, but some tips there. And this prompt that I've built, I was very clear on what I'm shooting for. I want to improve clarity. Who I'm targeting, I want it to be for grantors and funders. And they are people who are unfamiliar with the practice that I do, specifically these two. So when using these tools to try and enhance your existing materials or create new materials, be specific with your prompts. Tell it, this is what I want. This is who I am targeting. And I might have even done a better job with this prompt if I told it, I want you to act as if you are a grantor for the NIH and analyze my materials and how they align with initiatives in death and dying or advanced care planning initiatives. That way I can get that feedback on, again, pattern recognition. These are tools that identify patterns so well that I can get some of that feedback in ways to customize my materials more clearly. That works really well, especially for grants. Here in Claude and the desktop version, uploading my resume, which all of the information in my CV are public. They are on my website, so I have no problem putting them in here because they are already out there. So I had to consider that. And then getting that feedback. And here, perhaps add an executive summary. Define the key terms, because some of the terms I'm using are a little bit specific that non-experts may not know. I was like, oh, that's really useful. Emphasize measurable impacts, create a funding success section. So this is really nice feedback that could help with my CV when I were reaching out to grantors, reaching out to funders to gain some success. So tools like this can help you, like having a consultant, find some of the blind spots or opportunities that it would be difficult to know because we are researchers, we work in our fields, but we don't necessarily know that other side of what people are looking for. So there are also ways to make your job search more efficient, to save some of that time so you can focus on that content. So a couple of them here, aggregating job postings from multiple sources, identifying required skills. So I've done this for our program in design here, where I grabbed, let's see, this was about 3 or 4 months ago. I personally went on to job boards and grabbed about 70 job postings and copied them, pasted them into one huge document, much like I'm doing here with Claude, where I had them in a document that I could upload. One note, typically the paid models will allow you to upload documents. Images, they have no problem, but typically you have to do a paid model, which is where Gemini that's provided, or GPT, now that Plus is available for students without cost, can be really helpful. So I grabbed about 70 job postings here in our region, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, pasted those into a single document, and then working with Claude, had it analyze those job postings and give me the top themes. Like, what's the software that students need to know? How do these job postings, what competencies? What are the salary ranges? So in both of these, aggregating job postings or identifying required skills, they can help you to find some of these themes that might direct your thesis work, might help you to focus on a research initiative, or can help you to position your job materials so they are most relevant, especially if you have a website or have materials that are public, that the kind of story you tell aligns with what employers are looking for. Great tools that I could do qualitative data analysis and I could totally find themes on my own, but a pattern recognition tool like large language models in these tools can expedite that process. So then you can dig a little deeper. A side note on this one, that recently I did with Claude. Actually, I uploaded Senate Bill 1 here in Ohio into Claude and started chatting with the document to help me to better understand some of the components. I read the bill, but then chatting back and forth with that document to identify parts. Same thing with job postings, can really help you to find some of those themes. Also, some interesting ways you can use generative AI is in interview preparation, preparing yourself for that moment when you're going that back and forth in that interview. So a few ways here, and I'll give a few examples. Generating practice questions is a great technique. Being able to write a prompt to say, you are an employer who works in this field that is hiring this position. Generate some practice questions for me as if I were an applicant that I might be able to answer, or things I might expect what I would be asked. That could help you to prepare for that interview. The key there is back to that prompting. You need to write a prompt that's specific. This person is in this position asking, who is searching for this kind of employee or person with these skills. You'll get the strongest results if you're very specific with these tools and framing them of how they should position their questions. You can simulate interview scenarios and provide feedback on verbal responses. So I want to touch on verbal responses. It's a really interesting tool that OpenAI has in GPT, and they were the first in this area. That's pretty amazing. Their advanced voice recognition, advanced voice chat. If you've used this, you know it is pretty outstanding. It is the paid version only. I don't know if it's in the new student version now that I think about it. I hope it is. So this mode allows you to actually verbally go back and forth with ChatGPT. It does produce a transcript of that interaction back and forth. Here's what's really compelling about this tool. Not only can you just talk to it like you would with voice mode or something like that, but you can interrupt it. So while I am talking with this tool and I'm getting an answer, then I can interrupt and say, "Oh, wait a second, that's a really interesting idea that you just mentioned about the shuttles at Zion National Park. Let's talk a little bit more about that because I want to understand their roots and how people who are disabled or people who have different abilities use these shuttles and how they accommodate that." So that means when we talk about feedback on verbal responses, you can set these tools up with that kind of you are an interviewer, you're interviewing applicants for this position, and then be able to chat back and forth voice with that tool to practice and prepare for your interview. A real-time back and forth is a pretty fascinating opportunity. So there are a few cautionary tales for these tools, just a few reminders. And this is important for those of you who are inputting any of your content into these tools or and how your data and your content will be used, but then also what you're generating as well. So a few things to remember. So misrepresentation can be a concern. And with misrepresentation, that's hallucinations. And these models still can produce well, like my kids when they were 7 years old, if they didn't know the answer, they would just make it up. Or if they didn't want to tell me what was going on, they would just make it up. These tools don't know what they don't know. So instead of telling you, well, I don't really know about that area, you're going to have to move on, they still will generate content, including citing materials that don't exist. They're getting better at this. However, always test your materials and you've got to read through what it's created. And another one is submitting AI generated writing. If you generate anything like it's you're not revising your writing or especially a writing sample, that's really critical when your work is being analyzed, your writing is being analyzed for its strength in a field. You want to make sure it's your words and it's your content. So an example here, HT Group using hallucinations. This is back from February 2024. They're out of the UK, finding that GPT generated resumes actually produced an average of 14 embellishments per CV. So this was 1 year ago and change, but just 1 year ago, if you ask me, 14 embellishments in my CV is 14 too many. Like I need to make sure this content is true and accurate from my work. So that's something to be considerate of. The nice thing is you are the one who get to choose when that CV goes out or your resume goes out. So that means you don't have to take what I gave you. You read through and really assess if that content is accurate. There is a concern about over reliance on these tools too. And the research is quite fascinating. We're seeing the level of like cognitive decline in individuals using GPT to do basic tasks that otherwise humans would be doing. So we're seeing some skill degradation because these tools people are going to them first. So that's on the kind of the macro scale. On the micro scale, these tools will still generate very generic responses. And I find this in my generative AI course, and this is great. I tell students, I had one ask me at the beginning of the class, the beginning of the semester, they're like, Dennis, are we allowed to use generative AI to write for us in this class? I'm like, absolutely. And they were like, kind of like challenge accepted. But then my answer was, but the assignments are built in such a way that AI won't help you write. It is not going to be a useful tool. And here's why. The way I pattern questions and pattern content, AI tends to write generally. It does not specifically know our fields and specialized knowledge and terms that are specific to, say, your study at a certain place with a certain group in a certain time. It can't know those things. You know those because you had that experience. So generative AI will make really fluffy language. And that's where the feedback I give students is like, you're coming up with these unintended consequences, but these unintended consequences are so generic. They're not about the specific scenario that you're designing for. So just be aware. Any of these tools will generate pretty generic stuff that does not match your unique experience, but they can get you started. That's helpful. So there are ways that these tools can, you can balance the efficiency that AI gives you, but also still remain authentic. I'll give you some tips here that may help you to generate job seeking materials that will avoid some of those pitfalls. So, in saving time, there's a wide range of things you can do. You can still generate those drafts. You can use them to develop your professional skills, like going back and forth in those interviews, and you can research prospective employers using these tools. Um, that research process becomes so much easier when, like for Perplexity, you can amass lots of information in one place and go back and forth with that information. That can save some of that time significantly. And to give that example again, Perplexity is a great tool for that. Now, GPT and Claude as well both have web search functionality, and Gemini's connected to the web. Of course, it's connected to Google's Maps and YouTube and other tools in the Google ecosystem. So while this used to be a big deal that Perplexity could search the web, other tools have caught on now, and they're much more able to go out and search the web and get that information. So that means instead of doing your Google search for jobs and combing through Indeed and doing a billion different inputs, these tools can supplement that process. They've not replaced it for me. I still go to Indeed. I still go to some of these tools, but they can supplement some of your process to help you to bring that information all together in one space. Then one important thing for authenticity is maintaining your originality of your content. So infuse your content with your personal stories. Use specific stories about your research, about what you're learning, and what's specific to your education and to your work experience. And write in your own tone and voice. Generative AI can write pretty flowery language. It's gotten better, and you can shift it to where it does not speak as much that way. And I'll give you some techniques on how you can do that. But the more your voice comes through, the more it will stand out. So to give you an example here with Claude, and GPT allows you to do this too. You can give one of these models, Claude, it's a project. You can upload your content. And in fact, my earliest experiment with this, I uploaded 10 years of blog posts that were on my website. So this is content that was already public. I uploaded 10 years of that content and created what I called Ghostwriter that writes like me, because it's my own writing, and trained it to write in those ways. This is an example of a framework, experience design framework. I use this in my teaching. It's a book that I'm working on, where I've uploaded my content, and then I've actually chatted back and forth with that content. And I've used the model as like a focus group to test out my content. I've not used it to write because, well, I'm going to write my book. I'm not going to have it write my book, but it does write and work with content that I have trained it. So you can train one of these models in your own words and train them to follow your own style, and then work with that content back and forth with your own unique voice and your own specified knowledge, the specific knowledge that will produce content that's engaging and sounds like you. One thing I've really enjoyed about it too, this is a research function, a little bit different than job searching, though I will tell you it would be a nice career exploration. Training it on this information and then going back and forth to work out pathways about what kind of position would I like, what goes into these positions. I mean, imagine if you could amass 70 of those job postings all in one place and then talk with all of those recruiters. Essentially, you're talking with those when you look at those job postings, that you might be able to glean some insights about what those expectations would be across all those recruiters in the room. So an interesting way to use these tools. So let's talk a little bit about how employers use these tools to analyze your content. So applicant training systems are more and more common. Your content doesn't always go to a human being for efficiency. There's some ups and downsides of that for sure. So these systems, and this graphic is from SAP, software company. these tools look for keywords in your application. They scan for content, and this is shifting where it's not as much about keywords as it is about natural language processing. So then it used to be these tools would parse out and extract the tools, like kind of like how Alexa or Siri, uh, they're okay. They know chunks, but they're not like strong thinking actual large language models. The then on these tools, and still use this way a little bit, they're going to pull out like what's the education, what's the experience, what are the skills, amalgamate that into an easy to read process for a recruiter so they can look through, or an employer so they can find that content. Now we're moving more towards natural language processing, truly, instead of the keywords mattering, and analyzing the content of your resume or CV and chunking themes together based on that content. So making not those assumptions, but packaging your resume and your CV into a different format for those employers to use. And then also at a sketch level to be able to go through so many resumes and so many applicants. Again, if this is cringe for you, it's also a little cringe for me as well. These employers are using these tools this way. So, advice for you, and what I've learned through doing some of this research: use a standard format for your resume, or at least design it cleanly with headlines and subheads in ways that these tools can scan and grab that content. They're getting better at more specialized design, but you'll have the greatest level of success if you're designing more of a standard format. And then also use, and I have keywords for whatever that means. Like, if you use keywords, that's great. You just don't know what the keywords are. So are they really keywords? I would say that goes back to that authentic tone. In your content, share your specific story. Use terminology in your area of study and in your field. Use terms that you know are core terms that are essential for your work, and then sometimes specialize your work, or highlight your unique skills. So these tools are picking up on some of those terms and then can pass those along to those employers. So AI powered screening is a real thing. And even to the level of like analyzing video. Now, if you do a Zoom chat with someone, they should tell you they're using AI to analyze how you're interacting with them. But they'll also analyze your writing and doing analyzing skills and assessing your skills. Interesting story, I think from last week. That I think this was in New York, that a person created an avatar for them for their court hearing, and had that avatar as a video court hearing, and they actually had their avatar responding to and speaking with the judges as like not themselves. You kind of need to own who you actually are in those. So an example here, as we're wrapping up, L'Oreal using a chatbot called Mia. That job applicants could chat back and forth with to help them help L'Oreal to vet some of these job applicants before they actually get to the high touch back and forth. Here's one of the downsides, and here's some assumption. And this is an example out of Midjourney. I use this prompt: 35 millimeter film still, a retired woman sitting on her couch, and you'll notice it leaned much older adults. So I just said a retired woman. I didn't say a person who is waiting for their death to come to take them. These are all such grim, dark images. I was like, oh my gosh. And as working in Scripps Gerontology Center, we're like, this is a picture of aging we're trying to combat. We're trying to, aging does not have to be dying every day and suffering from just being alone. But sure enough, a retired person happens to be somebody of this age, not somebody who's 55. Somebody could retire at 35. Highly assumptive that your content will be analyzed in these ways. And this is one example, 2018, early on, that some of these resume screening tools, this one, that they favored candidates named Jared and those who played high school lacrosse. So some concerns there. This is early stuff. The tools are getting better. These tools will also be used to, and just be aware, to scan your social media to verify publications that are in your resume and your CV, and also to check your credentials. So that's just a good example there of being authentic with your content, because these tools will be used for efficiency to analyze if those are accurate. Um, with that, where we are right now, and this is from 2023, still many of these tools have not gained or built up enough of working data and training for effective learning to be applied. Still, they're being used, but you're going to get some uneven results. So, there's three bits of advice for you. So, be transparent in how you're using generative AI for your process. Check the content you get out of these tools. Verify the content that they produce, if that is right for you and if it's accurate for your story, and add your personal touch to your materials. Share your personal story to differentiate it so it stands out as you, and also showcases the unique skill set, thinking, and knowledge you have that will stand out, at least as these tools analyze those. So I want to give a few minutes. I've got some for questions. I know that was a big fire hose kind of moment, but I'd love to hear some of your insights or questions on some of this content.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That's great. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think about is how we have people that are either like AI avoidant, like completely like hate the idea of it. That's Connie Malone over there raising her hand. They feel like it's sort of unethical and not authentic, and it just makes them feel wrong, right? And then there's people that have just kind of like dabbled with it, maybe to make a funny poem or a funny picture of something. They've just done like maybe tried it once or twice and be like, oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of funny, or that's kind of weird. And they send it to their friends, and that's it. And I think more we're seeing people that have actually like done projects and changed their workflow or their job search with it. And that's a different level of use where you start to see things and notice how it works with prompts and how it can engage that's different than those other two arenas. So that's just a comment to people if you're on the avoidant or the casual to try a project, see how it feels as you give it a little more time. But yes, questions. Does anyone have any questions? And I also want to hear Danielle's thoughts on this as the Center for Career Exploration and Success. But if anyone has something, please jump in. And maybe go ahead, Danielle, if you have thoughts.
I was
I'm
going to
just curious
say,
what thought.
if anybody wants to kind of think about their questions for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think we've been noticing all of the trends that you talked about, Dennis, in the Career Center. One of the, I guess, cautionary tales that we have been telling students is that one of the employers we spoke to said that they received like 4 or 5 identical cover letters for the same position because all of the students had just plugged in the job description to Chat GPT and we were like, write me a cover letter. It was pretty much the same. And obviously none of those students got, the position because it was very obviously not their work. But having said that, there's a lot of really cool capabilities, that AI offers for refining your materials, for, brainstorming. I think it could be used really generatively. Same thing with like brainstorming with a human being, versus having them write your paper. We offer for any students here or alumni up to 1 year after graduation, you can utilize any of our resources at the Career Center. And VMOC is one of those that relies on AI to kind of get ahead of those like applicant tracking systems. So you can upload your resume in there. It'll give you feedback on that. And it uses, like a bunch of resumes that we plugged into it, to kind of generate what it thinks is a good resume or not. And it also has a new interviewing practice function. So you can upload a job description and it will give you potential interview questions, I think, like you mentioned. So a lot of cool resources, but yeah, just make sure you're using it, ethically and make sure your own words are ultimately the ones that are going to be in those application materials.
Yeah, personalizing is so important, like Dennis was talking about, making sure it has your tone, but also your content, and you are still being creative. So yeah, the other thing I don't know if you saw, Dennis, that yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, the Shopify CEO put out a leaked, well, it was like a leaked memo internally. I guess Danielle, you saw that too, about AI is no longer sort of like recommended optional at their company. They're really expecting their workers to be engaging with AI in most projects, if not all projects, and is moving from this sort of, oh yeah, try it if you want, to you have to be leveraging this tool because it is so powerful. And I just want you all to be aware of that, because I think employers, even in conservation education, maybe not quite yet. I think it's more common in like business world and startups in Silicon Valley right now. But at some point, you're going to start to see these questions about how are you using AI? How fluent are you with AI personally, coming up in general job interviews. Yeah, great. Looks like Christy, you want to just come off mute and
Sure. Hi.
question?
Worst camera angle with this laptop. And I did see a question in the chat box that perhaps might help with my question as well. It's part of it. Are there any certification courses through Google or something that would be beneficial to have on our resume to show proficiency? I think this is an extremely important question. I've just been terminated as a federal employee, and they have no idea where to start from an AI perspective. Not even just messing around. I don't think that is gonna be my best teacher. I think it's something that I really need to be taught. But I also think it's interesting because a lot of the places that I would think of looking for work, I'm not particularly sure that they are using AI in some of the ways described in this webinar. You know, I think about smaller NGOs, for example, who are doing all their in-house hiring, and I know that they're getting an influx of applications, but I also wonder how critical it is to be networking over some of this, like getting it right with AI. I'm not saying it, don't use AI as a tool, but I wonder about these other factors that come into play as well. So just kind of threw a whole bunch out there. I really appreciate what's been said so far, and I appreciate your insight today as well. Thanks.
Yeah, great questions about certification. And I'm aware of a few, but in fact, this totally tells you how I use AI. I like, well, let me pop on ChatGPT using the search function, and I'm like, what are some certification courses? Because I've seen several on LinkedIn, pop up as promoted ads. For me, design agencies and learning consortiums that I'm familiar with always pop up because I just know those. But I mean, there's a range of those. In fact, Miami is working on building one right now to do the very thing, Christy, that you mentioned, of like getting up to speed and starting to learn from zero, from the very beginning, which actually now is a great time to learn because, I mean, well, I'll say it this way. And Glenn Platt over in ETBD says this: if anyone tells you they're an expert on AI, don't trust them. And I say the same thing. Like, it changes every 14 seconds. So no one is an expert on this. So if you're like, oh no, I'm behind, no one is on the front of this. We are all still learning as we're going. So it's a good place to be. So I would say you can search for some of those. It looks like Google has one, a little bit more on learning engineering. I know that IDEO, they're a design agency, design thinking. They have their own course, and they've been great, really successful in doing kind of design oriented kind of training for design thinking and strategy. And then there's others like MIT offers some, Miami's working on theirs. So there's a range of that training. To be very meta on this one, you actually could open up one of these tools, GPT or Gemini and tell it, I am brand new at AI. I've never used this before. Would please give me some training on how to use AI effectively. You can actually do that, and they're really good at teaching.
Yeah, and I just put in a link for any Dragonfly alums, Christy, or that are kind of lost generally with the job search. We wrote this up based on some advice we've been giving through the years, but it could work for anyone in environmental or education fields. And I do think there's also an ethical component, Dennis, you alluded to a little bit, but the energy cost of these programs, that's been discussed, where these data centers are. So it's like figuring out your own comfort levels with AI, but also realizing it's not going to go away and it's going to become integrated in our lives. So hard to turn a blind eye to it. Glad you guys attended this, which is a first step in learning more. I know
I think
just about. Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
One thing that's really exciting about that, Kevin, DeepSeek kind of blew everything up when it dropped. One like pivotal or one like extraordinary component of that model is it used way less energy than existing models. And so I think our innovation that's coming with these is reducing energy consumption. I think there's great hope there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Some of those earlier studies on the energy levels were not based on those simpler models that are coming out. Okay, well, Dennis, thank you so much for sharing all this wealth of information. Thanks everyone for attending. And yeah, we appreciate it. We'll make the recording available as well.
Thanks for having
Connie.
me. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Danielle.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Great day.
You're going to convert me yet.
That's right.
Trying.
That's the goal. That's the secret goal. I don't know if you knew.